I will go through the minutes page by page in order to, as soon as I can get to them. Okay, so the minutes that we're looking at are the minutes of the AGM held on the 26th June 2018. Thank you very much. I was still looking at the agenda. I appreciate it. This is why I have capable help here. So the minutes that we're looking at are the minutes of the Thursday, 22nd June 2017. So I am on page 1, which is the attendance page. Any changes, any comments on that? I'm on page 2 of 8, page 3 of 8, page 4 of 8. Can you just wait for the mic so that those on the
wrong page. You were moving too quickly.
Okay, I'll slow it down a bit. So I'm still on 3 of 8. I'm now on 4 of 8.
On page 4. My name is Yari Cherney. If I look at page 4, paragraph 6.3, there are statements that are attributed to me, which, and there are some inaccuracies. I would like to fix them up because they give the wrong impression. On paragraph 632. Mr. Cherney queried if the names and the nature of the transgressions would be published in the Accountancy SA journal, and this related to the students that have been cheating in the board exam. I'm saying delete this paragraph and replace it with where I said some names will not be published. Which is slightly different to what you said here. In paragraph 6.33, Mr. Cherney required clarification on the meaning of most of the students. I said exactly how many names would be published. Those were more or less my words. So you have to delete the first sentence of paragraph 6331. 6331, the chairman clarified that those cases that had been seen thus far, no names would be revealed. That wasn't the chairman, it was Mr. Gwaza.
Okay.
Gwaza. And then, but the rest of the paragraph appears okay. What happened, Mr. Gwaza replied that none of those names would be published. And then I said that you have misled every CA in the room, as your answer is diametrically opposite to your first answer that suggested that some students would be named. The record should be set straight that when a senior executive of Saica attempts to mislead all the CAs at the AGM, I think that's really not on. So, and that is the reason why I'm setting the record straight. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Cherney. We'll take those into consideration. 5 of 8.
My name is Ian McNair. I'm from Brakpan. I am concerned that a member of the board, I'm not quite sure what Mr. Gwaza's position is, when, I don't know how to say it, but if this had happened in a board meeting of mine, he would be disciplined. What disciplinary action has been taken against Mr. Gwaza for endeavouring to mislead us in the AGM last year?
Please explain how you think he misled us.
Mr. Chairman, he said that the names of some people would be disclosed. And then he decided, and then he said that no names would be disclosed. So going from some to none is misleading. And it was only under interrogation that he actually admitted that the decision had been taken not to disclose any names.
So,
my name is Gloria Robin. In most boards, you finish the minutes first, and then you can do all these questions. So we're getting lost here because I think the minutes are not confirmed.
all right, so on that note, we'll go to 5 of 8. I'm on 6 of 8. I am on 7 of 8. I'm on 8 of 8. And just on 11.14, I think that was meant to say Mr. McNair extended the East Rand district's congratulations, I assume. Okay. Right, can I, does anyone propose for the adoption of these minutes?
I just want to mention another thing. It was promised by the chairman at last year's AGM, after the East Rand had made a donation to the Tutuka project, there was a challenge that was given to all the members of the board to actually contribute also. And that was said at the AGM. And if I look at the financial statements, there isn't one word of any board member making a contribution to the Tutuka project. So actually, shame on you.
Thank you very much. Can I have a proposer for these minutes? Jill, a seconder for the adoption of these minutes. Thank you very much. So the minutes have been approved. The notice to members convening the meeting has been in your hands for the prescribed period. It was made available on Saica's website and sent via electronic mail to members registered on Saica's database as able to accept communications in this manner. It was also published on the Saica website for all members. I propose that the notice be taken as read. Does anyone have any objections to this procedure? Okay, I note no objections. I'll then go on to cover the proceedings of the meeting. In terms of section 14.6 of the Saica Constitution, all voting shall be by way of a poll. The adoption and implementation of the electronic medium for purposes of convening the Institute's AGM is permissible under the provisions of the Companies Act 71 of 2008, read together with the Electronic Communication and Transaction Act 25 of 2002, and the Institute's constitutive documents. As previously stated, e-voting guidelines are available in electronic format and on-site in hard copy, I reiterate that you may use your own electronic device to log on and cast your vote during AGM proceedings, or you may utilize the voting stations set up in rooms 26 and 27, which will be available for this purpose when all resolutions have been tabled. All proxy votes received prior to the close of the proxy submission process, as at 9 on 24 June 2018, have already been encapsulated within the electronic system and the votes recorded therein. Members who have been appointed as proxy holders have electronically been advised thereof. Proxy holders are required to exercise all discretionary proxy votes assigned to them. In the event that any appointed proxy holder has not voted on the discretionary proxy votes assigned to him or her at the close of the general voting period, these proxy votes will default to myself as the chairman. Therefore, prior to closing the voting system, I will, as chairman, vote on all discretionary proxy votes which have not been exercised by the allocated proxy holder. I will also vote on all the discretionary proxy votes that have been allocated to myself as chairman. Members who are eligible to vote and have their own electronic devices are encouraged to vote for each resolution during AGM proceeding at the same time as resolutions are tabled for adoption. For those who are eligible to vote and wish to use the voting station set up by Saica, you are requested to proceed to room 26 and 27 after the AGM proceedings and to vote in respect of all resolutions tabled for approval. Members are encouraged to consult e-voting guidelines, which have been made available both in electronic format and on-site in hard copy. An eligible member will be required to pre-register to vote using their ID number and Saica membership number. Members will be required to log on to www.saicaagm.co.za and carry out the on-screen prompts. The details of how to do this are contained in the detailed e-voting guidelines. If you are having any difficulty in registering to vote, please speak to the persons manning the e-voting help desk outside room 26 for help in this regard. I now request that the voting be opened by INS, the external service provider hosting the e-voting platform. We shall now proceed with the business of the meeting. The Saica Integrated Report, which includes the annual Group Financial Report for the year ended 31st December 2017, incorporating the Board Report, the Auditor's Report, have been made available to you on the Saica website. A hard copy is available on site. Members are welcome to ask questions. I'll take questions from the floor first, and then after questions from members attending via webcast. We also have an overflow room in the members' lounge, so when we finish taking questions here, we'll allow for an opportunity for questions from the members' lounge and then the webcast. Are there any questions from the floor? There's one there, and then there's a second one.
Thank you. On the, I'll state my name. My name is Tumeka Ramwizis. In the board report, under the board members' interest in contracts, okay, it obviously states there that PwC did the internal audit, which was clearly stated. And then there's a Deloitte amount for 441,855, but it doesn't state what service that is. And I couldn't actually find anything there. So if I could just get some, information around that. And then I'll just ask my second question as well. There's an expense of about 13 million rand with a description exam fees. I just want to know what are those? What do they relate to? Thanks.
Okay.
Good morning. In terms of your first question of what the Deloitte amount related to, as you may know, we are an NPO governed by Section 30B of the Companies Tax Act. And at some point, there were concerns raised about whether we are adhering to that section in terms of not exceeding the 85% amount that we are allowed as a non-tax-paying organization. So we did have to get some tax advice and investigation around all the other things we do as an institute. And the advisory section of the tax actually did that work for us.
The second question?
In terms of the second question, the exams fees, we charge trainees in order to write exams because we do incur expenses to run exams and the venues and the markers that we pay for them and the exam setters and the moderators. So as much as we get fees for that, we also have corresponding expenses to that. And the bulk of that would be the whole process around exam marking and examiners and modifiers and all that stuff, and venues.
Yeah. Returning again. I just want to ask you why you've used Deloitte when you've got a national tax committee with some of the top people in the country doing this, and you could have had his opinion for free. But that's not going to my next question, and that is when I look at your note number 26, and I add up all the figures. It is 136 million rand short of the figure that you refer to on your income statement of 771 million, and I mean that somewhere you've just lost track of 136 million of expenses that you just haven't disclosed, which I find extremely troubling, because the income statement says 771. I add it all up, it comes to 634 or something. There's 136 million rand difference. But that's one aspect. The other aspect is, if I look at the sale proceeds for your actual previous building that you've sold, I actually can't find it in the financial statements. I get some sort of reserve accounting, I get some sort of loss, and I would like to know what you actually got for that building that you sold, because it's not apparent from the financial statements. On page 58, Saica has received a review application lodged with the High Court on the disciplinary matters on the students. I would like to know, when was this review application lodged? Has discovery taken place? And please explain where the matter is at the moment with respect to the review by the High Court of Saica's decisions in the disciplinary matters. But the most troubling thing I have with the whole set of financials and I'm not even asking all the questions that I could be asking, was with the chairman's message. With respect, I think that that there are some problems with that message, in that you say a number of prominent incidents have had the effect of eroding trust in the brand. Now, that is to some extent true, except I think a lot of it isn't actually Saica's fault, because this seems to mostly be attributable to auditors who make up only 11% or so of the members. And these incidents that seem to have happened seem to be as a result of the failings of URBA rather than the failings of Saica. And nowhere is actually Saica trying to put the record straight that they're not the regulator of these people, and that in fact you have said that you're not allowed to regulate them in terms of Rule 19.2, but so and in my discussions with Bernard Gullis, he said that Saica weren't the regulators in our meeting, but you seem to be saying we to blame, when I think the blame should actually be more at the door of URBA. On the statement of MAFR, I have a huge problem with MAFR for the simple reason that if Saica thinks that, if URBA thinks that MAFR is going to help independence, it's going to do something else. It will, if URBA relies on MAFR, they will do less regulating of the industry, and they've just given auditors a 10-year free pass on these sort of problems, and they don't seem to be addressing this particular thing. And then
okay, are we still dealing with financial statement, or you done?
Well, it's
Thank you.
dealing with the chairman's statement. I'm
thank
saying it hasn't covered
okay,
issues
perfect.
And has not attributed blame. In fact, it's given the impression
I hear
that
you.
Saica is the problem, when in fact
I hear you.
believe it's
We'll
not.
we'll respond to that. Thank you. Any other questions, or let's give some answers to some of the questions. The questions that relate to the financial statements.
In terms of note number 26, it's exactly what it says. It says other expenses. It is in no way an exhaustive list of everything that is in the financials. And why the difference? Obviously, the salaries figure is not in that note. And I'm not necessarily saying the balance is the salaries figure, but the payroll figure is not other expenses. And all the other minor expenses have not necessarily been consolidated to add to that. So there is no way you can reconcile to the last cent what is in that note and the total expenses of the income statement. You'll have to add different aspects to that. In terms of the proceeds on the Bruma building, Finance, Dion, please give the exact amount of how much we received for Bruma.
Thank you. Dion Watson. The exact amount we received for the sale of the Bruma buildings was 20,500,000. So that is what is on the financials.
Thank you, Dion. The questions.
The other question was, when did we receive the review for the APC? We received that in September 2017, and it is still at the court stages. We have gone through the pleading stages, and we are still awaiting the court date from the court.
Any further questions?
Thank you, Ian McNair. Last year in the financial statements there was quite a detailed explanation of salaries, and it talked about 25% bonuses and holiday bonuses and stuff like that. There was quite a lot of discussion on the salaries being considered to be excessive by the members in the AGM. Any employees that have been employed since then, are they getting these guaranteed 25% bonuses or whatever, or 10% increases every year? And is it true that you can have your fingernails done and massages at Saica's cost?
So the issue of remuneration, we have a remuneration committee, an HR committee that considers what an appropriate remuneration should be for our executives. This question gets asked every year. The answer is the same. The benefits that are afforded to the executive management have not changed since we provided the answer in last year's AGM.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We were referring also to general employees as well, having guaranteed 25% bonuses and 10% increases. That's not what I give my staff. And last year it also showed that a lot of people attending the meeting did not do that.
Let's ask the CEO to answer.
Just to correct that, we do not, there is no employee at Saica, starting right from the lowest employee to the highest employee of Saica, no one gets a guaranteed bonus. We don't have that. We do get a performance bonus depending on how the organization has performed and how the individual has performed. To add to that, there is no guaranteed 25%. As the chair has indicated, there is a remuneration policy that was benchmarked in terms of the best practices of what is happening in the nation, and it varies at various levels of what percentages you get, and it is not a guaranteed 25%. So that notion, let's correct it, is not correct. If you are looking at the detailed income statement note on the remuneration, comparing one salary of this year to the next year does not in any way indicate the increase, because the manner in which you structure your package will also influence what the increase there is. But at no point has the board ever approved an increase of 10%. The increase that the board considers is always in line with the inflation rate is, and it has never been a 10% increase, nor a bonus guaranteed for 25%.
Okay, there's a question right at the back.
Tabiso Madiba. In the note 23.2 is donor funding of about 440 million. Is there a list available for us to view of who the donors are?
Apologies, I didn't get the question.
Is there a list of this note 23 has an amount of donor funding? Is there a list of who those donations came from?
Yes, we do have that list. It is clearly articulated in the integrated report. Nasir, give the exact page. In the impact report. Do you have the exact page in the impact report that you can refer the member
So,
to?
yeah, we can make it available to the member. Okay. All right, I need to move to questions that are on the webcast.
Sorry, just relating to the financial statements and the report, the question was raised here regarding the donor funding, which has been answered. And there's also a question regarding the remuneration, including the remuneration of the CEO, which I think that has been answered as well.
If there's someone in the members' lounge, if they could indicate if there are people in the members' lounge who wish to ask questions. I was told that I can just ask and something magical will happen. Okay, so, okay, so no one there.
Page 84 of the Saica financials, which says the on-target bonus percentages, and it says minimum 25% on this page for the executive directors, for senior executive min 20%, and it says the on-target bonus percentages. So with respect, it doesn't seem to correlate with the answer that we've been given.
So can you repeat the page number again?
It's an annual integrated report. It's on page
you said 84?
64.
64. There is minimum.
So what is the question? You don't understand that table?
It's true.
Yep.
When here on page 64 on the integrated financial statements, it says the on-target bonus percentages of cost to company, executive director minimum 25%, senior executive minimum 20%. Can you please elaborate on how this works?
This table, as I indicated, is based on the performance of the organization, of the division, and of the individual. This is the remuneration policy that says if at the end of that assessment, performance-based, not guaranteed, your score in terms of what you are supposed to achieve gets to that. And remember, your score is made up of all those three elements: the individual, the weighted, and the organization. If at that point in time you do get what you were set to achieve, those would be the ratings that would be applied to you. I said in my earlier discussion, no one has ever been given all those, because when you weight the performance of those three elements, it has to come to above that for you to be able to get that minimum, and it is not guaranteed.
Well, the words minimum denote that that's the minimum bonus, number one. And number two, what you've actually, the explanation you've given should have been given in the financial statement so that we can actually follow how this actually works.
So, okay, thank you. Any further questions? Right? So there's some questions. Let's handle these under general. I don't think. Yeah. So I now propose that the following resolution be adopted: the 2017 Saica Group Annual Financial Report. The motion to adopt the annual Saica Group Financial Report for the year ended 31st December 2017 may be voted on now or at the voting stations after all resolutions have been tabled for consideration. I now move to Resolution 2, the Auditor's Report. Before proceeding with the proposal for the adoption of the Auditor's Report, can we please take the Auditor's Report as read? Is that acceptable? Members are welcome to ask questions. I'll take questions from the floor. Again, thereafter, questions from those members attending via webcast. Again, please state your name clearly before stating your question. I see no questions. Are there questions on the webcast? Yeah. Okay. I therefore propose the following motion. The motion to adopt the auditor's report may be voted on now or at the voting stations after all resolutions have been tabled for consideration. I now move to an update on the appointment of the external auditors, and I'll hand over to the Audit Committee Chair.
Thank you, Chair. Morning, everybody. Bradley van Dijk is the name. I just want to share with you that the Audit Committee have embarked on the replacement of the external audit function via a process that was a tender process that was advertised. At this point in time, we had 7, in terms of the tender, we had 7 tenderers, and there's a short list of 2 at the moment. The process is continuing. There's going to be an interview session with a committee, and the committee consists of board members who are not practicing auditors, so to avoid conflict there. And once that process is concluded, we would then have to make a recommendation to board. The audit committee would have to make a recommendation to board, and thereafter, if board accepts the recommendation, that would be then presented to a special general meeting to appoint the auditors in terms of the current constitution.
For the purposes of the record, I think the Audit Co-Chair might have inserted note. You indicated that the committee of the evaluation is not made up of members who are not auditors. I think you wanted it the other way around.
Thank you. Okay. So in terms of the AGM, you are asked to note the resignation of KPMG as external auditors, and that Saica are in the process of appointing new external auditors for the ensuing year, as explained by the Audit Committee Chair. Members are welcome to ask questions now. Again, I'll take questions from the floor and then to members who are attending via the webcast. There's a question in the third row there.
Thank you. Tumeka Ramwezis. Regarding the appointment of the auditors, I think you mentioned something about a special general meeting, because obviously we won't be at this AGM. So will that be called like properly again and constituted in this manner where we get to sit here and approve that appointment?
That's correct. Once the process is completed, there will be a special general meeting called where we'll have to vote on the appointment of those external auditors. Correct.
Thank you. I see no further questions. So we will now recess for 20 minutes to allow members who wish to utilize the Saica voting station to cast their vote during this period. So my time says it's 10:01, so we'll be back at 10:21. Thank you. Please enjoy some coffee. I will now read the results of the voting process as calculated electronically and as supplied by INS on my chairman's dashboard screen. So for the first resolution, there were 180 votes, 21 abstentions, 18 against, 141 for. So the motion was passed. On the second resolution, there were, I'm surprised by this, but there were 21 votes. Oh, sorry. So this is, I apologize. So for the first resolution, including the chairman's proxy, there were 201 votes, and there were 21 abstentions, 18 against, and 162 for. So the motion passes. On the second most resolution, right there. There were 201 votes, 26 abstention, 15 against, 164. So again, approved. Thank you very much. We now move on to the last item on our agenda, matters under general. Are there matters that members wish to raise under general?
There are a number of matters I would like to raise under general. The first thing is Saica is a signatory to the King Committee and the report, and it is quite normal that that there is a vote on the remuneration policy of the institution under the King Code. I can't understand why Saica doesn't have such a vote on that, because I think the results would be quite interesting of such a vote, and I think it's provided for in the King Code, so I find it a bit surprising. Can I have an answer to that?
Sure. I'll provide an answer. Can I have further questions?
Oh, okay. Name Tumeka Ramwezisi. The first thing I want to comment on or raise a question on is on your address, Mr. Chairman, that you gave at the opening of the meeting regarding this review that's taking place on, the structure of the organization and composition or constitution of the board, etc. And my first comment around that is you mentioned that it would be concluded by the end of this financial year, which would be December. We're in June now. I just really think that's too long for what I think is, maybe it may sound hyperbolistic, but it is a crisis of the profession. And the public looks at Saica as the profession, and we as members are members of Saica. Saica is constituted with the members, and to go out there on a daily basis and be faced with questions from people on your profession. Oh my gosh, what are you guys doing? You guys are not doing anything about this stuff, and we, can't make public comments on behalf of Saica because that can land you in all types of, I don't know. I just don't want to find myself here on some hearing. So I'm relying, on official commentary from Saica. It doesn't come. I'm looking for action. I get here and I'm being placated with words, and it's not relieving anything. I'm still as worried as before all those really nice words you said up front. So I think there needs to be much more urgency about this. Already we've got, as you mentioned in your own address, the Nzebeza Commission, which was supposed to be concluded in April, then it was June, there's further requests for extensions, and this is, it's just starting to smack of everything else that we see around us. I don't want this profession and this organization, and obviously by association, the rest of us, to really become, to be the microcosm of something that's very endemic in this country. I still want to be part of a profession that I respect, that used to be respected, and really now, on a daily basis, I need to fight to prove my own individual integrity, which we were doing in any case, but now we're coming on a back foot. So I do think we need a lot more urgency around this whole inquiry and conclusion of this, because I also really don't believe much in this sort of we will introspect and self-correct kind of rhetoric that seems that anyway I'm drawing from it. Then the second thing that I also just want to The second thing I want to mention is really a comment in response to what Mr. Cherney mentioned around MEFA and how it will result in less regulation. I really just, I don't know if I can ask you to read a bit more, consider things, but really, you know, some of the comments you were making regarding MEFA just sound a bit uninformed. Thanks.
Okay, all right. Maybe let's answer some questions and then we'll open for another round of questions. So the issue around the remuneration policy and the King Code, and also the issue on the Constitution, are both related. Part of what is intended with the constitutional review is to align the institute, the constitution of the institute, with what best practice is in the country in terms of governance. So I would imagine, without prejudging what the committee will come up with, I would imagine that such issues will be contained in our new constitution, or certainly proposed in our new constitution. With regards to the timing of the constitutional review, the board would love to have this done yesterday. But the risk that we take in trying to rush things, there's always that risk that we end up doing a poor job. We want to go and have a deliberate, well-considered process that is not a knee-jerk reaction, that builds a constitution, that builds a foundation for this profession, for this member body, that would ensure that it strengthens this body going forward. I'm terribly sorry if it sounded like empty words to you, but I would assure you that this board here does not take this as empty words. These are issues that are on top of mind for a lot of these board members. It is, for us, one of the most disappointing things that the profession finds itself in the position that it is in our tenure. A lot of these things are not obviously things that have just come out in this last year. What has come out in this last year has exposed significant deficiencies in our constitution, and we need to address that, and we'll address that thoroughly. There were also questions that were raised at the beginning around the mandatory audit firm rotation. I think the position of Saica is clear with respect to that. The regulator does have the right to implement mandatory audit firm rotation. What our views were or are doesn't matter. The regulator has decided, and now as individuals or as members who are regulated, those registered auditors need to comply with that. There was a question around the cause of the brain damage on the CAs are the auditors, and why are we focusing on the balance of chartered accountants? What I've heard, what I read, are people questioning the value of chartered accountants, are people questioning the roles that chief financial officers, CEOs who happen to be CAs, what their responsibility is in ensuring that corruption, fraud does not happen under their watch, but even worse, it does not happen aided and enabled by them. So the idea that it is only the auditors, the registered auditors amongst the CAs that are contributing to brain damage is not a view that this board shares. And then there are questions on the webcast around the trillion donation. So just to address that, the trillion donation was a donation that was an unsolicited donation which was made to the Tutuka Bursary Fund. We have responded to this. We've issued a media statement to cover this. So the donation came in on the 28th of February 2017. On the 29th of July, you then had the advocate who was investigating Trillions Association with the Guptas with respect to the ESCOM contract, who made his findings public. Post that, there was a board meeting of the Tutuka Bursary Fund. That board meeting resolved to return those monies. That was on the 18th of July. 24th of July, correspondence was made with Trillion to request banking details in order to return those funds. That correspondence was only responded to on the 22nd of August, and the funds were refunded to Trillion on the 22nd of August. Moving on from there were questions again from the webcast on the disciplinary processes and what we are doing as Saica. I'll ask the CEO to address those.
Thank you, Chair. In responding to the questions that are being raised on the disciplinary processes, I want to just make the AGM aware that in respect of those matters that are still under a hearing, we are not in any position to entertain questions in the media or in this forum about those aspects, because they are a subject of a disciplinary hearing, and we will not compromise the process of the disciplinary hearing by being pulled into a process where we must now start answering matters that are supposed to be answered to at the hearing. So all the questions in this webcast that have got to do with what are you doing about this one, what is being said, unfortunately, if it's a matter that is in front of the hearing, irrespective of what that case is, we do not comment. And it would be the same comment you'd have heard us giving even to the media, that as much as this matter is raised, we cannot talk to those aspects. However, I will talk to the issue of the process. And there is one point I want to clarify. It is not management that decides what needs to be published or what is not published. In terms of our bylaws, informed by our constitution, the disciplinary process is an independent process run by the PCC, which is the Professional Conduct Committee. If the Professional Conduct Committee find that your matter that you have been alleged to have done is of a significant nature and is above their jurisdiction, they will refer that matter to the disciplinary committee. The disciplinary committee, which is chaired by an independent judge, not even a CA for that matter, it is normally chaired by an advocate, not a CA. Yes, in that committee there are members who are CAs. It is an independent disciplinary committee that is run independently of management or the board. All the matters that are raised about allegations or about misconduct are considered by that disciplinary committee if it was escalated to them by the PCC, the Professional Conduct Committee. It is the disciplinary committee that will then decide when a matter has to be published, what has to be published, whether the names have to be published and all that. All what management does takes the instruction from the outcome of the disciplinary committee, which is independent, and then publish that. Because there is a question that is saying, how will we know that management is not subjective in deciding what to publish and not what to publish? So it is very important that everyone, especially you, our members, understand that process. It is not a discretion of management. It is the decision that is made by an independent disciplinary committee that makes that decision. In terms of what has been amended lately in terms of the bylaws, the popular Section 21A. Section 21 has always been there in your bylaws. Section 21 has always said the disciplinary committee shall decide what needs to be published that is in the public interest. Let me make it categorically clear that amendment of the bylaw that happened a month back was not an introduction of the public interest clause. It wasn't. It has always been there in your bylaw. The only amendment that the board made, that the board approved of management to implement, was instead of waiting for the whole process, that sometimes takes very long, and I'll get to the point of why sometimes it takes very long, and being quiet and not even taking you members along on what is happening on the disciplinary front. The amendment that was made was saying before that whole process is concluded, after the allegations have been put to the affected person, the institute can publish that we are undertaking disciplinary hearings against this individual. It was not about publishing what the individual has been found guilty of. And that's the only amendment that has been made lately, to not wait right until the end of the process to say, by the way, we have been taking disciplinary action against this member. That is the only amendment that was made. Nothing to the effect that we are amending. Now we have said if it is in the public interest, the CEO can publish. That has always been there. Last point, Chair, I know I'm taking long. The last point, in terms, there is a question of what is happening to all the other CAs that are not auditors. We are not disciplining them, we are taking long. I want members to be aware that as Saica, we do not have investigative powers or summoning powers. We collaborate with the other institutions that have got that power. And those matters are under investigation. At that point in time, when we have got sufficient evidence and a case to put to a member, you will see every member of Saica whom we have got evidence against that there's something that has been committed, they will be put through the process. And that is why we instigated the Intabeza inquiry, because the magnitude of the number that is involved in the whole allegation about the employees of KPMG was of a big magnitude. Hence, we formulated the inquiry to do that investigative work. There is a question from an international member who asked, how are we going to ensure that they do not lose the reciprocity agreement that we currently have with other institutes? I can assure you, if you even look on your financial statements, you will see one of our biggest expense is the affiliations that we have with all the other international bodies through the Global Alliance, Accounting Alliance, and through IFAC. We, as recently as last week, had an engagement as all the institutes that belong to GAA and IFAC, which are the same institutes that we have got reciprocity with. And this matter, all of us are dealing with it. We are all of the same understanding of what each individual institute is doing, and there is no risk that any one of the reciprocity institute that we have does not know what Saica is doing and how we plan. Part of what we'll do after this is to engage the board on how we will have a committed effort to reach every member so that every member understands directly what Saica is doing. So those reciprocal members that we have, they've got no issue to worry. All the other members of GAA and IFAC are aware of all the interventions, and most of all, it is not that it's a defense. Almost all the institutes are facing the same challenges as the profession. So we are not at risk as Saica to say you are the only one, so you are being struck off.
Thank you, Thank you, Vanessa. I'm going to take one last round of questions. There's one. I wanna give priority to people who've not asked questions, please. The Sizwe and then Nonkuleko. I'm giving priority to people. There's a member right at the back who's not. There are two members at the back who I will take and then end there.
Thank you.
You shouldn't just end. You should hear everybody's question.
Sizwe, please go
Thanks
ahead.
very much. My name is Sizwe Ngasana. I just want to comment again on the opening remarks that the chair, US chair made, particularly with regards to the matter of investigations, especially that was done by PwC, and your comments around some investigation whose report was leaked. And really just a statement to say, I know I saw a statement that was issued by the Saica board confirming its confidence in the management and the executives of Saica. Because I think maybe a lot of people may not have seen that, because especially last week there was a lot of noise, especially with the starting of the inquiry. And it is really regrettable that the report, which actually caused damage to the profession and particularly to the executives, was leaked. I'm not sure exactly how it was leaked, but I just wanted to really just support that statement which was issued by the board, to support the executives, particularly in terms of how Saica itself is being led. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. My name is Nonguleko Koboto. I just want to find out if there is a process just beyond Saica on this whole thing of the trust issue, in terms of ERPA, Saica, the firms, other professionals coming together, because it's going to take more than just Saica to restore the trust. And I want to find out, Chair, whether there is real commitment to have courage to make the kinds of decisions that we have to make to restore that trust.
Thank you. The name is Matlatsi Movundle. Chair, I'd like to thank you for the work that you and your board have put together. But I'm extremely concerned that your comments, with all due respect, Chair, the house is burning, and it appears to me that your board is trying to use a bucket to put out the fire. I think you need to take this matter rather seriously, because I'm concerned that soon we'll not have a profession. Two, there's this reference to this independent PCC that is independent, that makes these decisions concerning recommendations to discipline people. One, I want to know who this PCC is, and two, is it not time that we dissolve this PCC, because PCC, I mean, it's not biting. For example, you say that Saica can't subpoena people, but we, on a daily basis, we are flooded with with admissions of guilt to the Competition Commission, where companies admit that they've been doing price fixing. That's an admission of guilt. And these are Saica members. What more do we need to do? If a member says, I went and I robbed the country, admits this to the law authorities, and this PCC that's sitting there makes zero recommendation. This PCC, honestly, if we are honest with ourselves, this PCC has to be dissolved, because they are putting the whole organization into disrepute. Thank you.
Thanks. Thank you. Good afternoon. Good morning, Chair. My name's Colin Brody, and I'd like to thank you for the good work you're doing. However, I think what's come forward, and not only here but in other places, is we're all very worried about our brand, and it's under attack. There's other organizations that have pinched, like the Bracket SA. Bracket is already a brand. There's another organization that's dying to get into auditing. They're calling themselves Specialist Immigration Accountants, Brackets SA. There's also another body called the Association of Certified and Chartered Accountants, or Chartered and Certified Accountants, around the corner, Now, you all know, we should know the history of why we are chartered accountants and why the Americans are certified. You can't be both. Mr. Chairman, in practical terms, I do believe, now Saica, is a hybrid organization. It's not a statutory body, but we have to belong to it by statute. We cannot audit without being members, and we cannot call ourselves CAs without being members. And we keep hearing you do not have powers of subpoena. Mr. Chairman, I hope that the Saica is seriously trying to get legislation amended that it will have power of subpoena. Not only is it necessary to give teeth to the inquiries, but it would also be a statement that that Saica was not capable of dealing with, say, a Steinhoff, and we want to be in future. I think that would go a great deal just as a brand management thing. It's like visiting a house that's burnt down if you're a councillor. And the other thing, Mr. Chairman, is it seems likely that there will be court cases around competition, conniving, and around Steinhoff. I do hope that Saica will consider making itself a friend of the court in these cases, to be seen, to be taking it absolutely seriously. We also, Mr. Chairman, we maybe have to look at retraining. Now, I'm one of these old farts who did my articles of 5 years when it was just indoctrinated into you like playing scales on a piano or hitting a tennis ball against the wall, what accountants were, what we did, and what was beneath us. I think, Mr. Chairman, I'm going to get even more controversial and say Saica seems to be very non-political. First of all, we live in a country of great inequality that's trite. The way when we did articles, poor kids could come and work for 5 years without much skills and climb the ladder to their capable level. We don't only need CAs and CFOs, we also need bookkeepers and credit clerks and so on. And if kids drop out as they used to, but they've done a year's working for a CA and they've learned how to be methodical and how to file and possibly how to switch on a computer and do a spreadsheet, we would be injecting skills that we have into the economy. Finally, Mr. Chairman, to get even more controversial, there's a lot of legislation on the table that as an accountant appalls me. Even if we have different views on expropriation without compensation, the funding of the National Health Insurance, nobody knows how it's going to happen, least of all the minister. There's a new act that's coming out where there will be no fault road accident fund. If you are a drunk, you jump the red lights, you might have a better claim than the person you knocked over. There's another act, they're amending the National Credit Act. About 19 million people, which is roughly the same number of taxpayers and grant recipients, it's all of a number, will be allowed if you earn less than 7,500 Rand a month and your debts are below 50,000, it'll be waived. This is exactly, loss of debt is what caused the crash, the toxic mortgage crash in 2008 in the States, and it's happening now. Are we just going to sit and say, we're independent auditors, or is Saica going to take a stand? I know it's controversial, but I think it is something the board should be considering. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you. Let's try and answer some of those questions. Sizwe, thank you very much for your statement of support. I don't believe you need an answer, but the statement of support is much appreciated. Nongulego, the question around the process beyond Saica, there is indeed a profession-wide, country-wide process that has begun last Friday. About 30 people, representing 15 firms, met under the leadership of the Auditor General. The independent regulator was there, National Treasury was in attendance with the Deputy Finance Minister, the Minister of Public Enterprises was in attendance to start to discuss the process of what needs to change in the profession. Again, the sentiment in that room was, yes, the house is burning, but we need to be very careful about making sure if we want to make deep structural reforms that we need to go through the process, and it needs to be a considered process. That process is just begun. The sentiment in the room was certainly a sense that said there's enough courage to make the decisions that need to be made. We were, from a number of members in the room, people were even asking the questions about whether we as members are capable of asking ourselves the difficult questions, and whether we needed to find other people outside of our profession who can act as a mirror to us to say you are not going far enough. So that process is underway. The issue around we are not responding adequately to the crisis or underplaying the crisis, I guess I hear the sentiment, and I appreciate the anxiety, the anger that comes from our members with respect to what has happened. And we need to ensure that the number of views that are expressed here, that in this process of reviewing what needs to change, how it is changed, how do we change the PCC if it needs to be changed, we need to make sure that we have adequate systems to allow members to contribute, because this is not about this board, it is not about the Saica management, it is about our profession. So I take the sentiment in terms of needing to do something urgently. I'm going to ask Vanessa if she wants to comment further on PCC and training. Let me just finish the one or two. Yeah, in fact, please go ahead.
The PCC, you have covered it, Chair. Part of the review, and without preempting what we are presenting to the board after this, is how we can relook the whole disciplinary process and fast track the speed with which cases are finalized. So that is a matter on the agenda. I will not elaborate any further. In terms of the question about, it's basically about competency of our members, considering that our profession has been in existence for very long, and some of the members might not necessarily be at the right level where they're supposed to be. One of the big major initiatives that is currently happening, and it is on the scorecard, is around the whole competency framework to make sure that our members are still relevant and they are competent in terms of the expectations of the economy that we operate in. So it is definitely one of the priority areas that the Institute is looking at. And we will get to all our members. It's just a matter of planning how and when. And we appreciate the agency thereof. In terms of, there was a comment about not just focusing on CAs. There are some kids that drop along the route that we can still lose those kids. That is a valid point, and we may not necessarily in our name, and I guess that's a discussion that one day the board can look at. We may not necessarily in our name say we are the South African Institute of All Accountants. Currently we say Chartered Accountants, but we have got a whole value chain, not just at the apex of the Chartered Accountants. We do have AGAs, Associate General Accountant membership. We do have even technicians, because we appreciate that as a CA, you need the whole support structure along the whole value chain for you to be able to operate efficiently. And I think from our side as management, we take note that if we do have those, and it's exactly for that reason that we actually realize that firms have done a lot of investment along the CA training route, and unfortunately we lose some of those that we had to acknowledge, the AGAs and the AATs. So if it is a weakness on our part that we have not, I won't say market, we have not spoken enough and made the market sufficiently aware of the other levels other than the CAs. It's a point I will take up as one of the areas we need to focus on as management. And I also take the point about Saica's visibility in terms of some of the key developments in the country. If you take, for instance, the example that you mentioned about the review of the Credit Act, as the custodian of finances, we definitely do have to have an interest as Saica in what goes into all these white papers and the regulations, because at the end of the day, it will be our members that will be implementing all those change acts, and it will not help for us to only respond when the acts have already been promulgated. And it's also another point that in our initiatives and strategies management, we will give focus to, that we do participate in the important national initiatives that do impact us as professionals.
Okay. There were a few more questions. Let's go ahead. I'm noting 3 hands, one at the back there, then 2 here, and then the fourth one at the back.
Good morning, Chair. My name is Denga Ramudzisi. Thanks for the time to ask questions. The first issue that I have is I'm still not getting a sense that the current board has got a sense of where you are taking us as the organization. You are all, from what I'm here picking up, it's all reactive. There's no strategic direction of where we're going, and that's why we find ourselves in the situation we are, where now there's a whole lot of things happening around us, and you're all trying to react. And in reacting that, you're pushing all these things to various committees and not taking any ownership. So I'm very concerned about what is happening. So if you can then say something to us that can give us confidence that everything that is happening here is under your control. That's the first thing. The second part is the question that Mavundela asked there about who are these members of the PCC. Firstly, when in your opening remark, you said disciplinary are independent of the board and management with the DC. And then we were happy. Then when the CE spoke, she mentioned all of a sudden there was a PCC before the DC. Now, Mavundela asked, who are these members of the PCC? Who appoints them? And we know, so what influence does management or the board have on the members of the PCC? Because unfortunately last week, or wherever, there was a hearing where there was an implication on various people within Saica. And if those things, we don't know whether those allegations are just merely somebody trying to protect themselves or there is validity to it. But we need to get assurance that those things at least will get addressed properly to the fullest. And if there is no validity, it's checked out properly, adequately, with proper thought applied to it.
Hello, Ian McNair. I am really concerned about the salaries and stuff in the firm. They seem to be big, and I went to the Northern Region AGM, and there were 5 people there from Saica. 1 person helped chair the meeting, the other 4 sat there. I don't know what they were doing, but I don't think that was right. Then there was a question about the app for Saica. The youngsters, and that guy in the blue jersey is one of them, said that they could do it in no time at all, and it was raised at the previous Northern Region AGM. So when Mr. Rudy talks about us not being relevant, we don't feel like we're relevant. ACCA and SITE and all these people are in the press. I don't see us ever being invited to pass comment, and that is because we don't make the stand that he's talking about. Terry's comments on that speaks thing that you had a couple of weeks ago, I can't find it on YouTube. I can find all the other people's names and stuff there, and that's fine. But I would like to see what she said, because I believe it was quite dynamic and critical in a positive way of our institute. Regarding the MRF, East Rand sent a delegation down to the parliamentary hearing, and we talked about the World Bank didn't like South Africa doing it. Trevor Emmanuel, in that talk that you guys had the other day, said we shouldn't be doing it. Brazil did it, and 50% of the audit work was done by the Big Five or Four, whatever it was. And after that instituted it, 75% of the work then went to the Big Four. Holland has withdrawn from it. I just can't think. Italy had that, and there was that milk story. So it didn't make any difference. There's a lot of complaints about this new levy that you're bringing in for tax practitioners. And I think these are just further cracks that are showing us that we really are in a bad state. Thank you.
I just wanted to elaborate. There's been quite a few members that have been complaining about the fee charged to tax practitioners. It seems to be about to raise about 13 million rand, and it just looks like it's way too much to actually regulate tax practitioners. When I worked for SARS, we had BComs that were assessors, and one did 3,000 assessments a year. He has 5,000 CAs. They would write queries, they would get answers and everything, and one BCom like that costs 20,000-30,000 a month. You take two of those, multiply it for a year's worth of costs, you're coming to under R1 million, but you're raising 13 million rand for on this project. It just looks like it's way too much money, and it just doesn't look justified to many members. Also, you are not responding to numerous queries from members on this thing where they've sent through so many messages to Saica and they just weren't replied to. All the replies were not proper replies on this fees for tax practitioners. Can you please just look at that and see if you can justify the 13 million rand, or if you're going to cut those fees down significantly. Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Lebogang Sinne. So to you, Chair, I have to go back to the question that Tumeka raised, or rather the point that she raised. And what I would like to reiterate is that there really is a sense of urgency in terms of how the Saica board is constituted, amongst other things. So if we are looking at this financial year as the period within which these things are going to be looked at, my concern then is, are we going to have to wait until this time next year to basically vote on the proposed changes? Because if that's the case, then again, really the house is burning. For me personally, I'm not very comfortable with this constituency-based membership of the board. So what then happens if your members are saying next year is not good enough? Thank you.
So, starting with the question about lack of vision of the board and being reactive. So, the focus of my address was certainly on the issues that need to be addressed, on the issues that are burning issues. If you read the integrated report, if you read the impact report, there's a whole lot of things that Saica is doing. Now, whether those issues that are being done there are good enough, we are not the ones to judge. We've put it out there. There's an impact report that illustrates a lot of wonderful things that the organization does. And this is not the board taking credit. It is the board giving credit to management in terms of some of the things that we do. It is, of course, it is important for us to be critical, but of ourselves and challenge ourselves to do more. But if you engage with people on a regular basis, what you will establish is that this profession, more than other professions, does significantly more to contribute to the country, does significantly more to develop professionals that we can be proud of. The focus is on dealing with those people that don't fit the mold. That is what we were talking about. Now, so actually I'll leave it there. I'll leave the question to you, Vanessa, on PCC. On salaries, salaries high, comment noted, I think we've dealt with it. Vanessa, if you could also talk about our digital strategy when you get to it and not taking stand on issues. MAFA, again, that's an EBA thing. We've made our comments. We don't have the right to legislate on that. The last question around the timing. The process that we need to go through is that there needs to be a review of the Constitution, which needs to determine what needs to be changed in a member organization. What aspects of the King Code need to be introduced that make sense in a member organization. We are envisaging that before the end of December, that will then be put to a special AGM for members to vote on the changes. While some members have expressed their unhappiness with the representative nature of the board, please be also aware that there's a significant amount of members who like the representative nature of the board. So we need to navigate all those things in order to get to an answer that makes sense.
Thanks, Chair. The question on who is PCC and who appoints PCC. We have got a nomination committee that appoints a disciplinary panel. That disciplinary panel consists of the two parts, being the PCC and the disciplinary committee. So members get appointed to the disciplinary panel, and once they're on the disciplinary panel, some of them are allocated to the PCC, some of them are allocated to the disciplinary committee. As I indicated earlier on, the chair of the disciplinary panel is independent, and it is that chair then appoints the members that form part of those panels. So the members that will now sit on the PCC and the DC are not appointed by the board or management. They are appointed by the panel itself. Yes, the panel members are appointed by the nomination committee. And I was not sure whether the question is expecting specific names, and I don't think that would be proper to specify specific. Legal, do you have the names? On the website? You don't have the names offhand?
Yeah, I don't think this should be a secret. We
can publish those. I don't think it's
absolutely.
We'll put those names on the website, but I don't currently have the names right here with me, but they are appointed by an independent chair.
Okay, let's just put them on the website.
Yes, we'll put them on the website. The other questions about mandatory film rotation, I'm not going to touch. I think we have responded to that. And the relevance, I think I've also addressed that in terms of what we are doing in terms of our competency model review and how we are going to make sure that all our members align to that. The last question around the tax practitioners levy. Yes, acknowledged that we did receive queries about how we came about with that tax practitioner levy, and I do know we have articulated the breakdown of how that fee came about, and basically how it came about is as all the 46,000 CAs, there is a base fee that all of us pay for membership fee. And at every year when you renew a membership, we always articulate what that base fee is going to cover. In addition to that, now the tax practitioners is a specialist function that we are a regulator for, that you belong to us as an accredited regulator of tax practitioners. That requires of us to do more, to provide more services to tax practitioners. It would be unfair to then expect the whole total membership of Saica to now carry that additional responsibilities that comes about because you specialize in tax. So what we did as management and approved by the board was to go and look at all those additional work that we have to do specifically about the regulation of tax practitioners. And that levy has basically only considered the additional work that relates to the tax regulation function. And we have articulated that to the response that I think we'll also issue as part of the whole, I know our members always say we bombard them with information, but if it will be to the benefit of every member to understand why the additional fee, we will circulate them. We will circulate that breakdown to all members. But to the queries that we received from tax practitioners, we have indicated what constitutes that levy. And unfortunately, you might think it's not sufficient, but considering the specific work that needs to be done, because we are also being monitored by SARS in terms of what we are doing as a tax practitioner regulator. And we cannot afford to be found wanting in terms of our duties towards SARS, as much as we cannot afford to be found wanting in terms of our duties towards the tax practitioners.
We find that we've got auditors that now you are going to regulate. Are you going to put a special levy on all the additional work that has to be done for regulating, investigating KPMG and stuff like that? It's only a part of the members. It's exactly this. You are being discriminatory. You must apply this principle to every single other area as well.
Without necessarily creating a bilateral, we are not regulating auditors, and we are a membership organization. Members belong to us. So if a member of Saica is alleged to have done something, it is part of why we are a member organization that we have to do that work. So it is not a specialist work like tax. If tomorrow we are expected to regulate, what's the next one, Peter? Business rescue practitioners. It's a specialist function. We will price that function, that specialist function that we need to do. But bringing a member to account because he's alleged to have not obliged to the code of conduct, that's part of why you pay a membership fee.
All right.
Thank you.
We can, excuse me, we need to give other people who've not had a chance to ask questions because we need to wrap up. Otherwise, this can go on forever. I don't think it's right. Okay, so I see Mavunga has also asked a question. So Mavunga, before you ask, then I'll go back to Ian and ask him to ask his question. So I'll take those two questions and then I will close, please. Last question and then I'll close.
Thank you, Chair. I don't understand this disciplinary procedure. Trevor Manuel said that there were 5 chartered accountants in jail for theft. How come they weren't struck off?
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to follow up, just to get clarity, really. In terms of this PwC report that you alluded to, is it going to be published to the public or is it going to be circulated to the members? And then also the Nzebeza report, when it comes out, is it going to be availed to the members or to the public? And then secondly, I think it's common cause that there were, I think Mr. Ngasana referred to it, there were serious allegations that were made against the executive and the board. As much as these are allegations, these are serious matters that has a serious reflection on the organization. What are we going to do about it? My view is that these matters should be investigated. And since that this PPC is toothless, we should consider if the meeting agrees with me, that we should perhaps look into an independent or a retired judge look into these matters, because they're very, very serious. We can't live in an organization where esteemed members like Mr. Nlasana and yourself are accused of these things. We need to clear these things so that we can move on. And I think we need to take this, I think the chief executive alluded to it. I would request that by close of business today, if we could have this PPC and the DC members list published. It's very important that we know who these people are, and then as members we can then decide how to move forward, because it's very, very critical. Thank you.
Last question right up front here.
Thank you, Chair, for the indulgence. I'm thinking about this board that, fine, it's been raised over and over that, there's going to be this review and all of that around how it's constituted. And I'm wondering if, as a member, am I now paralyzed? If I'm saying, but the effectiveness is in question, or the performance, or whatever, what recourse do I have? I don't know our constitution very intimately, so I'll need advice from yourselves. But what do we do? So, for example, the end of the year comes, we don't have this review concluded, we don't get this special general meeting, so the things that, for example, have been promised here do not happen. What can the membership do? Because right now, I'm feeling like I don't have an option other than to just not pay my fees.
Statement. I'm going to ask you to deal with the first one. Okay, the 5 convicted. In terms of the PwC investigation, it is not normal procedure to publish forensic reports. It's going to be presented to the board immediately after this meeting, and the board will deliberate, and if there's action to be taken, action will be taken. The Nsebeza inquiry was set up in order to provide information that will go to the Professional Conduct Committee. So that report will go into the Professional Conduct Committee, whether Advocate Nsebeza then decides to publish it or not, because this was set up as an independent inquiry. Advocate Nsebeza will decide whether to publish it or not. Is that correct?
In terms of the terms of reference of the commission, Advocate Nsebeza is to present a report to Saica, not to the public. And the purpose of that was for Saica to use that report to inform the disciplinary process. And that's what the terms of reference specify.
Okay. Thank you. Thanks for correcting that. In terms of the allegations that are referred to against the executive and other board members, again, those will be presented to the board, and the board needs to decide how to move forward with regards to that. The allegations that pertain to me will also be presented, and the board needs to consider whether, given all those allegations, whether they think I'm still fit to be chairman. And I will recuse myself from the discussion if the member is concerned by that. In terms of the recourse that members have, a significant amount of the people that end up on this board come from regional committees. So members vote for people to become their regional leaders, and they end up on this board. So that's the recourse, I guess, that you have. How do you guys... So I guess you can call for a special meeting of the regional council. You can have them voted out in terms of the positions, because the people that get here are the presidents of the various regional councils, and they are voted on by the members in those regions. Correct. Okay, thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you, Chair. Just a comment from my side. Based on the sense of urgency to relook at the Constitution, again reinstilling public confidence within Saica and the comments that are out there in the public, I think perhaps, if I'm hearing you correctly, my sister, it's really around a commitment of when Saica is going to do the constitutional review and then send recommendations of a board restructure or whatever the outcomes of the process will be. And maybe there could be a commitment that may come out from this meeting.
Okay, I thought I had made a commitment. There's a disagreement on the timing, but I've been very clear about the timing. So I think we've made a commitment. Okay.
Sorry, there was one last question about the... Yeah. Well, the statement was made by Trevor Manuel at the Courageous Conversation. We do not have any official record of members that are in jail. However, it might be that there are some of those that are in our role that still have to come. We will be in touch with Trevor Manuel to get those names, and so that we can understand who are those. But there is no official record to Saica that says these members are Saica members and they're in jail. What the board has approved recently is the enhancement of our monitoring and compliance unit, so that we can reach and not necessarily wait to be informed. So there is no record of such.
Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you. As all the business on the agenda has been dealt with, I now have the pleasure of formally closing the proceeding of the annual general meeting of Saica. Thank you for your attendance.